So for your Learning Target 2 summary assignment, what you're going to do, let's go through the directions. This assignment requires you to apply what you learned in Learning Target 2 last week to interpret 3 different food webs, which will be given to you in this, and answer questions about them using what you learned about the transfer of energy in an ecosystem and Learning Target 2. And I'm hoping that you watch the video and the slideshow for this week before you complete this assignment, because that will also help. So for each question, you are to write your explanations in complete sentences. That means with proper punctuation, capitalization, and also using a variety of Learning Target 2 vocabulary, which is listed in this word bank here for you. This might not be all of the words from Learning Target 2, but I encourage you to use as many as you can. So let's look at Food Web 1, for example. So this is Food Web 1. There's going to be 3 food webs, right? So I know that these 3 questions here are just for this food web. And to clarify that, in front of every question, we have the food webs that it's referring to, just in case there's like formatting issues or you don't see the food web directly above the questions. So you know which food web to look at. So for Food Web 1, it asks, why will a decrease in the grass population impact the mouse population more immediately than the population of deer? Right? So I'm going to look in the direction that the arrows are pointing from grass, and I'm also going to look at mouse here. So I see grass is the source of food or energy for the mouse. Are there any other sources of energy for the mouse? No. I see this is the only arrow pointing in the direction of the mouse. And then for, what's the other one? Deer. So I'll see grass points in the arrow of deer. I know it's a food source for deer. Let me see if there's any other food sources though. Well, I see there's also trees, right? So the deer has 2 sources of energy, one of them being grass, while the mouse only has 1 source of energy. So this question again is asking, why will a decrease in the grass population, right? Why will less grass impact the mouse population more immediately, right? More severely than the population of the deer. So I'll start my response by saying a decrease in the grass population will impact the mouse population more immediately than the population of deer because, and then give your reasoning. So this is the kind of responses that and the kind of thinking that we're expecting you to do for each of the questions for all of these food webs. Food Web 2 only has 1 question here, and Food Web 3 only has 1 question about it here. So I'll go ahead and I'll read the rest of the questions, but if you have any other questions as to like how to answer a question, just reach out to me and Mr. Weisler through email or in the comments. You guys have been really good about that if you need any more clarification. So question 2, again, is about Food Web 1. Which organisms in the food web above are carnivores? So you're going to look here, look for all of the carnivores, right? You might have to refer back to your definition for carnivore. So list your organisms here that are carnivores, and then tell me, how do you know? How do you know they're carnivores? What do they eat, right? What do the arrows pointing in the food web show you? For number 3, state 2 species, 2 of these species, right? That would be in competition, and explain why by using specific vocabulary. So you're going to have to think, what would species or organisms be in competition for, right? Then I'm going to find 2 species that would be competing and then explain why, right? And then let's go to number 4. Okay, so in Food Web 2, if the mountain lion went extinct, there are no more mountain lions, describe what would most likely result in the deer and the shrub population. So you're going to have to base this on what you know um, about the relationship between the mountain lion, the deer, and the shrubs. So if there's less mountain lions, what would happen to the population of the deer and the shrubs, right? I know there'd be more deer, right? If there's less predators eating the deer, then what would happen to the shrub population as a result? And lastly, number 5 for food web 3. What is the role of molds, bacteria, and yeasts in food web 3? And how are they a part of the transfer of energy in this ecosystem? Okay, so I might have to go back to my week 2 notes to see what mold, bacteria, and yeast are, right? Because they're kind of on the side here. That's a new way of seeing this food web. But I know that molds, bacteria, and yeast, that sounds familiar. It's not like one of these primary consumers, secondary consumers, or tertiary consumers that I know, right? So I'm going to have to go back to my notes, see what kind of role that mold, bacteria, and yeast play. And then in that definition, it probably says something about how they transfer energy in the ecosystem, right? So I see that all 3 levels point back to this mold, bacteria, and yeast. And then I look at the direction that the arrow is pointing here, and it says that from mold, bacteria, and yeast, it goes back to these raw materials that are then used by that bottom level of producers in the food chain.